The opioid epidemic gripping the nation, now making its way into the Valley.
A Valley organization, the Valley AIDS Council, is working with other agencies to save lives.
Channel 5's Trayson Bragg spoke to the Director of Education to learn what's being done to save lives.
The Center for Disease Control tells us the number of deaths from opioids in the state of Texas increased by 330 from the years 2014 to 2016, marking 2,831 opioid deaths in 2016. That number is expected to continue to grow.
Literally, I have false teeth. I've had them since I was 17 years old because I knew I can get Vicodin. And I didn't care. Pull them, my abs, it hurts. I would find some reason to get my teeth pulled so I would get Vicodin.
That's Mary. She's not shy about calling herself an addict. She tells us her journey with opioid addiction began at a very young age after a horrific incident.
When I was 8 years old, I got shot. And I was on painkillers all my life. Painkillers, painkillers, painkillers.
Mary tells us by the age of 17, she was taking 10 Vicodin at a time. Trips to the hospital for overdoses and medication poisoning were common. Mary says she left Chicago and moved to Brownsville in the year 2000. Within 2 weeks, she says she was introduced to a drug known on the street as Mexican mocos, aka black tar heroin.
Immediately, no pill's gonna take that. It's gonna work again. I haven't popped pills since.
She explains black tar heroin became more than just her new drug of choice. It became her world. Chasing that $10 high was her only concern. She says in less than a month, everything changed.
And that I hit rock bottom, like quick, fast and in a hurry, like overnight. It seemed like I was in the streets hustling, doing things that I never thought I would do. A lot of it was mainly prostitution, and that's your morals. You seem to go out the window real quick.
Mary bears the scars of her addiction. Collapsed veins and needle marks run across her entire body. She isn't alone in this uphill battle with opioid addiction. She tells us the numbers of new opioid addicts are growing here in the Valley. She's seen the growth with her own eyes. She says often they're middle-class teenagers sneaking into their parents' medication who are getting hooked. She begs parents to pay closer attention.
But you can go in and get go into the dollar store and get pills that look like Vicodins, take your Vicodins and drop them in, drop the dollar pills in there, and I'm not gonna sit there and look, is this a Vicodin 10 over 325? Or I'm just saying, you're not gonna look, they look like them. I know you're nothing but a dollar aspirin.
She's seen many of those new users and longtime friends overdose. That can lead to death. Oscar Lopez is the Director of Education at the Valley AIDS Council. He says it's clear the heroin and opioid epidemic is on the rise in our community.
In the state of Texas, it is the #1 killer of anyone 50 years of age and younger. So heroin is very prevalent.
Lopez explains common opioids include prescription painkillers such as Vicodin, morphine, and fentanyl, among others.
What we have seen is an increase in the amount of people who have access to painkillers. We've seen those painkillers now being sold on the streets. And when the painkillers run out, people do turn to heroin.
Lopez explains 80% of opioid users will relapse within a year after becoming sober. He says to combat the deaths caused by this epidemic, VAC has begun providing free Narcan kits. Narcan is a medication that can prevent death during an overdose.
This basically will counter the effects of the opioid. So it goes into the nasal cavity, it immediately gets absorbed by the body, and again will help wake up somebody who is overdosing.
Lopez tells us a Narcan kit costs anywhere from $175 for the spray up to $1,000 for an injection. VAC is providing them to anyone who is at risk or knows someone who is at risk of an opioid overdose. To prevent your family from being affected by this epidemic, Lopez has this suggestion.
If as parents and grandparents we locked up our medicines, especially our pain medication, we would greatly reduce the amount of teens that are experimenting with painkillers that are opiates.
Mary says she's picked up her Narcan kit. She's even passing out kits to fellow users in hopes she can save lives. As for her battle with addiction,
but to me, I feel like this is my last chance. So I'm not there yet all the way because I used 2 days ago, but I'm one day at a time. All you can do is one day at a time.
Now, after an 18-year battle with black tar heroin, the 56-year-old says she's re-entered a methadone treatment facility to help her end her opioid drug use. Lopez tells us VAC has partnered with both the San Benito and Port Isabel police departments in the battle against this opioid epidemic. VAC has provided Narcan kits and training to their officers. The Port Isabel Police Department tells us a month after receiving the Narcan kits, officers were able to save the life of a man they encountered in the middle of an overdose. Lopez says VAC is willing to partner with any police department here in the Valley. Just contact him at VAC. We'll have that information for you on our website, krgv.com. In the studio, Trace and Bragg, Channel 5 News at 10.